Here.
Mrs. Bitter? Here. Mr. Comerford?
Here.
Dr. Seeger is absent today. Here.
Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome all of our administrators here. It's definitely great to see everybody and have everybody together. It will be a very interesting presentation. We look forward to that. I'd like to begin our meeting today reviewing our mission and vision. Our mission is to cultivate a culture of academic excellence, inclusion, and innovative learning opportunities for the whole child. Our vision is to empower all learners to reach their full potential. Need a motion for the approval of the agenda, which includes addendum, personal consent agenda 1E2, 3O, as well as other board business.
Second.
Mrs. Rupp.
White? Aye. Mrs. Bitter? Aye. Mr. Mallon?
Aye.
And Mr. Comerford?
Aye. Agenda passes. I need a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Comments, questions? Mrs. Lower, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bitter? Aye. Mr. Comerford?
Aye.
Mrs. White? Aye. Mr. Mallon?
Aye. Mrs. Weber, if you'd like to give a brief overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mallon. And good morning, everyone here in the room, as well as those of you who are attending virtually today. If you are attending virtually, you can find the agenda and addendum that the board just approved on our district website at sycamoreschools.org on the Board of Education page. At this point, I have not received any requests for public participation here within our audience, and I have not yet received it as well from the virtual audience, but we'll monitor that here in just a second. Any of you who are in our virtual audience do wish to participate in public participation, those requests can be sent to our moderator today, Mr. Christian Long, at longc@sycamoreschools.org. The minutes that were just approved for the September 21st meeting will also be posted out on our website.
There's no public participation. Moving on to superintendent's agenda. Kick the meeting off with our report card update. Outstanding results. Achieving 5 stars in all of our categories. So I know the board is looking forward to an in-depth dive into the report card, what we learned, and always how we can do better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll start with just, I think it's important to congratulate all the students, all the parents, the entire community, the entire staff, all the administrators in this course. Without being a collective, we were able to achieve these type of results. So I think the results speak for the hard work of the entire Sycamore home team. I think it demonstrates a commitment on our behalf, on the team's behalf, that relentless pursuit of mission and vision that we talk about. We do that within the district. So keep that at the forefront of what we do. The other thing I would say is, it's a commitment to pursuing that necessary alignment that we desire as part of our strategic plan. We think these results are great. I would say that our team members would believe that we're a little ahead of our schedule. We thought we'd be able to achieve these results, but I don't know that we believe this quickly. Not to say that we're not excited about the results, but we think we can also continuously improve and find ways to make that next step as well. So we have much to celebrate here today. Much to talk about, but there's also opportunities to grow. We'll continue to do that. Last thing I'll say before turning it over to my colleague is that we see a lot of positives, a lot of positive trend data here, but again, we're going to ways to make sure that the opportunities for our students and for our staff is successful here. I won't steal any of Mrs. Wagner's thunder because she gets to present a lot of the good news and also share some of those opportunities. Mrs. Wagner, thank you for you and your team
thank you so much. I just want to echo just the intentional efforts of the entire home team, especially our teachers coming off of a pandemic, and knowing that we've got some significant learning gaps, the amount of intentional support for all students from our teachers, but also our building administrators, was instrumental in these results. And we will continue down that road. But truly, it really was a team effort, and many thanks to the students and their families as well. So super excited about this. So Mr. Long is going to let me drive because apparently I've got a lot of slides in here, and he doesn't want me to say next slide 20 times. Thank you, sir. Fair enough, right? Exactly. All right. So as was previously stated, the fantastic news is that we had 5 stars in every single category. Now, there's no overall district rating this year for any districts. That won't happen next year. So looking at each of those categories, we are really just shining in. The last category, college career, workforce and military readiness, was not rated this year. That will be rated next year. So we're digging into what that looks like with our high school team moving forward. We were only one of 12 districts in the entire state to get all 5 stars. So super impressive effort. The other thing that we think is really important to highlight is that looking at our strategic plan. So our strategic plan guides everything that we do. Every decision we make needs to be aligned to that strategic plan and the goals and objectives therein. And so when you look at 2 of the components on there that kind of specifically relate to a local report card type of measure, the ensuring academic growth and rigor for every student with a focus on continuous improvement. And then also maintaining top tier ranking on the high school report card. We were able to meet both of those with this most report card. And again, coming out of 2 years of interactive learning, super impressive. So let's dig in. Let's do this. So achievement. Yeah.
The other thing, we rank among the top 5 school districts in the state of Ohio based on performance index. Based on the way performance index is done, they didn't obviously provide an overall ranking this year, but I think we feel good about the climb into the area that we're in, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But again, it shows an intentional connection to our
And we should get that next year, Mr. Lewis.
Well, they actually do we do have a rank of just PI scores. We were 22 in the state for PI scores, behind only, I've got it here in my notes, behind only in the area, Marymount was 4, Madeira was 12, Indian Hill was 20. And we were 22 just for PI scores across the state. So let's dig in. So again, looking at the PI. So the performance index, just as a reminder, I know I shared with the board the changes before, but let's kind of activate that prior knowledge here. So no longer is it a static 120 for the maximum PI. Okay? The maximum PI now is calculated by taking the average of the highest 2% of performance index scores that are achieved across the state. So that max PI is going to change every year. So what that means is that we've got to still be intentional. So that continuous improvement component, we still need to be intentional about continuing down that road of continuous improvement, because that max PI is going to change every year. So we could get the exact same scores next year and possibly not have 5 stars. The top 2% of the PI scores achieved for that year, take the average of that. So again, that's going to fluctuate from year to year in terms of a max PI. So that again is something just to keep our eye on. We need to continue to grow and achieve at a constant rate across the state.
Kelly, not to get too bogged down, because I don't want to do this long presentation, but on this particular point, do you know why the state did that?
I don't know the why. I know it's in the legislature. It was a law. That was one of the things that changed. But one of the pieces of feedback across the state was, even though the A, B's, and C's weren't technically supposed to be comparing districts to each other, they did. So going to compare districts to each other, let's look at how all the districts performed across the state and then have a comparison as opposed to just the random criterion of 120. So that was some of the conversation. We absolutely can. So our PI was 96.9%. So 104 out of 107.3 possible. What's really significant about that is that we're 1 point below pre-pandemic. So back in 2019, which is what I keep referring back to when we look at our results, we had one of 5.7. So a little over 1.7% below pre-pandemic status. So again, after 2 years of interrupted learning, to have made up that much ground is significant. That's huge. You also notice that we've got the largest percentage of our students scoring in that advanced category as well, which again is really significant. We also had, if you recall, last year, we had a significant number of students that were untested. Parents opted out, so that really dropped our performance index because we get 0. So it's not like they're not counted. They're counted, but they count as a 0. We had a much lower percentage of students that did not test. So we did not have that significant impact to our PI. So again, looking at that performance index piece, really important. Here's the other part about the achievement piece that's different. It used to be that your performance index was 75% of your achievement, and then the indicators, which were the scores on the assessments, were 25%. No longer. It's all performance index. So we still get the reported indicators, but they're only reported to us. They're not calculated in the performance index. So that's another shift in terms of that rating. So even though we don't get scored, for lack of a better term, on these indicators, they're still really important to look at. That still gives us valuable information. We still want to continue to push to make sure that all students are continuing to grow and achieve at higher levels. So even though that's not technically scored, still really important information for all of our grade levels. And that's some of the data that our buildings are digging into in terms of looking at specific standards and how we're performing and those types of things when we look at areas where we can improve. So I wanted to dig just really quickly into each of the grade levels, because the reason that this information is important is that, especially that stacked bar graph on the left, it's important to look at where are our students scoring on these assessments, because number one, that feeds our PI, but also we want to make sure that every single student is growing and achieving to their full potential. So we want the ultimate goal of really moving all students up to the next tier, if you will. And what might we be able to do to make sure that we're continuing to in that trend? So this is third grade. So you will see in grade 3, we have a significant percentage of students score advanced in both language arts and also math. Our limited math percentage is greater, you can see, than our language arts limited percentage at this grade level. This is not a huge surprise, only because in K through 4, we have a really significant focus on literacy, because literacy is the basis of all the things. And also that ties into our third grade reading guarantee perspective and also the K through literacy component. And so that's just the nature of the beast in an elementary school, that heavy emphasis on literacy, which clearly is working out well for us. You will also see to the right, the comparison chart as we go down to the grade levels. We are the red bar. Similar districts are the blue bar, and the state is the yellow bar. And you will see as we go through each of these grade levels, we are either right even with these similar schools or above in every single grade level.
Can you talk briefly on how they choose similar schools?
Yeah, so they look at demographics for similar schools. They look at size. So like the school as a whole, in terms of the makeup of the students and the teachers and demographics. And there's a slide in here that actually lists those schools, but that is done by the state. That's not us saying, oh, we think we're similar to these folks. They look at all of our demographics and then base the comparisons on those. Yeah, that's what I meant by that as well. The community.
all of this are reevaluated each year. So most of our similar districts stay the same from year to year, but based on those.
Yeah.
So some schools maybe are similar districts, but they're not.
Think of that. All right, when we look at grade 4, we see the first evidence, if you will, of advanced plus scores in mathematics. So advanced plus, we get an extra bump for any student who's taking an out of grade level assessment that scores advanced. So for example, a 3rd grader taking a 4th grade assessment, or a 7th grader taking a 9th grade assessment. Those students that score in that advanced get an extra bump of advanced plus for that out of grade level assessment. So that starts, you can see in mathematics in grade 4.
So these are actually 3rd graders.
Yes. So when you look at that, that advanced plus piece, that's pretty significant here in grade 4. Again, when you compare us to similar districts, again, we're outscoring those similar districts. Moving to grade 5, what we see is science coming into play. So the science assessments begin in grade 5. We had a large number, again, large percentage of students who scored advanced in science as well as language arts. In this grade group, we also see, though, a larger percentage of students scoring limited in math. So in terms of continuous improvement, that's something that we are digging into as well. What does that look like? Is it an alignment from a large district perspective? What we're looking at through our curriculum review is not only horizontal alignment, but also that vertical alignment. What does it look like from an alignment perspective when kids come from 4th grade into 5th? And what does it look like alignment-wise across our elementaries as well as across the grade levels at each of our buildings? So that's from a large curriculum perspective, we're looking at that, but then the buildings are digging in, again, to those specific assessments in their building and looking at what are some standards, for example, that we've got a collective group of standards that students just aren't performing well on. And how might we be able to get a little bit more intentional about those pieces? Then also drilling down by students to really look at what types of intervention or supports we can put in place.
Living this in my own house, it's fractions.
Oh, no,
Right.
that's-
Fractions, because I have to train and retrain at my kitchen table about fractions.
Well, and the standards, math nerd here, the standards in grade 5 for mathematics are heavy on that fraction component. But so we've been using, and they've been getting the conceptual piece in grade 4, then it takes on a whole new thing in grade 5.
This is nothing new.
No.
We've seen this drop pre-pandemic. So my question is, what are we doing different? I don't get an answer to that. What are we doing different? It's the same thing when we get to high school. When we talk about geometry.
Correct.
It's the same, we see the same drop year after year.
Correct.
So I'd like to know, maybe this is a retreat topic, how we start to tie that into our curriculum review when we get to the math piece, which I think is this year, or at least phase 2. How we really get to that, to dig into that, to help bring these scores up. Because this is great results, but it's the same theme.
Correct. And as a result, part of the reason for that, Paul, is that lack of alignment. I mean, that's one of the things we saw when we went through that curriculum review. That was huge. Talk to the teachers, look at the data. It's that misalignment of progression of the student experience and the progression of those standards. So that's one of the pieces that we know. We found that out from our curriculum review. So that's going to be different because we're trying to fix that alignment moving forward. But then the other piece is really looking at that full depth and breadth of those standards being taught to every single student. What does that look like? And so those two components are a shift in our practice. So to your point, what are we doing differently? Through the curriculum review, we're pulling this data in as well to really take a hard look at, we've got to get that continuity of that student experience. We've got to make sure that those standards truly do build upon each other as we go from grade level to grade level, and that we've got consistency across our grade levels. Because we've got, even horizontally, we don't have alignment right now. So it's that from a curriculum perspective, it's that alignment piece that we're doing differently now, because we're starting to address it. That's what we're going to impact those.
How long do you think last year was a focus on ELA. How long does that take before you start to see? Well, it's more than just, first you gotta find out, where your deficiencies are, your opportunities are, and then there has to be some alignment, training, for
Right.
teachers. How long does that take for?
Do you want to,
Is
since
it a
you're,
year, is it 2 years?
I would say realistically 2 years. So if you think about this year being a 3 course of study, so getting people in the same room at the same time to create this common vision, and then next year actually doing that alignment work. So we would begin seeing some of that change next year. So I would anticipate then for the 24 report card, maybe start seeing some changes as a March, but then with full implementation occurring during the 24-25 school year, that's where that would be manifest. It kind of builds on what Mr. Ballard was saying. We found this board has heard for the last number of years and related to geometry that there was sort of a realignment of teaching specific concepts earlier on because we knew that those were going to be tested with the state test, but just kind of a rearrangement. And we're clearly not seeing a movement in that particular area like we anticipated based on what we were told was being changed. Is there a way when you're looking at this data to identify on a student level, like where is the, not only like what are the concepts that our students maybe aren't getting taught to the full extent that they need to have a mastery of that particular topic, but do we know specifically, is it a certain grade when they are taking geometry where they're having difficulty? For example, if you're a double accelerated math student, you're taking geometry in 8th grade, I believe. If you're a single accelerated, you're taking it in 9th grade. Where do we see the kind of the misalignment there? Is it because I don't think in the past we had accelerated or double accelerated kids who are taking geometry, were flying through it, and we're getting really good scores. Where is the breakdown there in that particular stuff?
That will be part of the data as we go. So again, that alignment being, it's not just a grade level issue, that there are conversations that need to have that articulation along the way. So as we move through our pre-course of study and course of study work, being able to look at geometry specifically, but then seeing how those standards and concepts build over time within the grade levels. It is interesting. So just in the past year or so, the state, through the centralized reporting system, allows teachers to go in and look at their students' data, particularly the standards, the 5 standards in which students performed the most poorly on the state test. So that is a new platform for districts across the state, but that provides interesting conversation to say, hey, let's look at our students in those 5 standards in which they performed poorly, and then how can we respond instructionally to that? So some of those are the conversations that we need to have.
As part of the curriculum, also looking at individual, it's obviously looking at a particular subject, but is it also looking at are all teachers aligned in terms of the flow of how they're teaching it or the depth of how they're teaching it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just having those transparent conversations and sharing student experience within the classroom, that's where we're starting, because that's where we need to be able to identify gaps. So what are we seeing as misalignment, as maybe repetition, and really, as we're working with curriculum groups, our conversation is you're not just approaching this from your particular grade level, but we're looking at a district perspective. So what is that child's experience? What's the Sycamore child's experience from K to 12? We're not here necessarily advocating just for a grade level. We're advocating for every step along the way has alignment. And those curriculum team members in that same room at the same time are looking at that experience holistically, not just coming in. This is the tunnel vision. We have to do that in order to achieve that alignment.
but from what you just said, the 2 things that I feel good about and comfortable with is that you're trying to get more of a vertical and horizontal alignment, which is great. But to me, what strikes me is just, like you said, getting every student the full depth
have a particular challenge in math, you're gonna have an even harder time accessing that curriculum. So that to me seems like where to hit it, right? Because you're gonna have a lot of students that have that when they're jumping to that next level. And I'm sure that's indicated in it. You can see like over the years that we are still above the other school districts. It's just we lost a little ground, but then we catch up later on. So I think that is, thank you for pointing that out, because I think that's helpful too. Because it's right, the whole district, every kid, the whole spectrum, right?
And I will say this related to geometry scores went up even after 2 years of interactive learning. So
Let's go.
some of the work that we did before the shutdown is continuing. We did not lose ground in geometry during a pandemic. So we're on the path. So I just wanted to honor that work. All right, grade 6. So again, similar results here. What we really noticed here in grade 6 in mathematics is that just a slight increase in the percentage of students who were limited in basic in math. Again, we still need to dig into that piece from that building-wide data analysis and the curriculum review work. I met with Jamino and his team. Actually, I met with every building to dig into their local report card data for their building. You're going to see them present to you at the board retreat and talking about, what are we seeing, where some plans we can put in place, those types of things. So more information for you guys to come on that for the buildings. Yeah.
Again, this is a question maybe we can focus on retreat, but in the 5th grade, if I'm roughly doing my math, it looks like 8 math.
Correct.
And you see that the number's much bigger in the 6th grade.
Correct.
Is that based on numbers? Are more kids having the opportunity to get the math through the matrix in the 6th grade?
Well, in the 5th grade though, that's where the matrix begins. So there's some more students that are going to be in that grade level. So that's that out of grade level testing piece. So that
in
was
6th grade, the 5th grade.
correct.
More kids.
All right, when we get to the junior high, not only do hormones kick in, as someone who taught junior high for 10 years, but we see that we've got, in this case, a larger percentage of students scoring advanced in language arts. In math, again, slightly smaller percentage of students scoring in the advanced plus piece. Again, like I said, we're looking at that limited piece in mathematics as well. That's concerning. What are we doing again to make sure that every child is progressing and learning? So what are some of those deficits that we need to probe into? When you look at our comparison, again, still faring well when we look at how we compare with other districts. 8th grade, science is back again. And so we've got a pretty significant percentage of students scoring advanced as well in science, as well as the advanced plus in mathematics. We see some concern in language arts for the percentage of students who scored limited. That's larger than it has been in the past. So again, looking at that alignment piece to what Ms. Tompkins talked about from an overall district perspective, but then also really digging down student by student. What does that mean, and how can we provide more supports for our students that need it? High school. So when we get to the high school, government and American history are our standouts in overall scores. If you notice though, biology has the largest percentage of students scoring advanced. We've got advanced plus in algebra and also geometry, although we already talked about the geometry component that, again, it's not at 80%, even though we don't get that counted against us from a scoring perspective. It's still important for us to pay attention to it and to continue to work on it. Again, when you look at our comparisons for each of those, we're either equal or above schools that are similar to us. So the similar districts that we were talking about, this is that list. So they look at all those demographics. So by demographics, I mean not just within the school, but also within the community, as Mrs. Weber shared. All right, progress.
Can I just jump in?
Absolutely.
I realize for the high school, you have it as all the grades together, but what I notice is that every time there's a transition, you see a little bit of a bump down, right? I mean, it makes sense, a physical change, like starting a new job for a couple of years, right?
Sure.
So it's hard to sometimes maximize your. So is it happening also the freshman year? there? Like, do you see, I know you didn't separate that out, but can you see that it's a physical, like, can you, because you see it twice.
Right.
Fifth grade, seventh grade, is it also happening in ninth grade?
Well, the only ninth graders that would be involved in state testing would be students taking algebra one. Or students taking geometry. So for either of those two, so American history, government, bio, those are higher grade levels. So it's just those two math courses.
So maybe there's, I mean, maybe there's something there about just changing physical space, having a new administrator, having new teachers, having a new schedule, like, that's just developmental. It's your child.
Well, algebra actually goes up. If you look at math, it goes actually
It does.
up.
But geometry.
Yeah.
But geometry's not tested.
I mean, I'm saying like fifth, seventh, ninth, like every time you begin in a new building, you're starting a whole new sort of environment for your learning space. And the people and your expectations, sometimes that can impact your performance on a test.
But on the standard math track, they're not taking geometry. Ninth grade.
No,
Ninth graders are not.
So the only apples to apples comparison would be math, but algebra.
And I think it's important to point out, this is every district that we talk to has the exact same hits and struggles to be able to get back to where they want to be. It does. I'm sure we'll figure it out, exactly, sell it, make some really good money.
All right, so the progress, that is a growth measure using value-added calculations, which is just as significant and just as important as the achievement is. So when you think about the combination of growth and achievement, you know, if you accelerate the growth, you get higher achievement. So we're always looking to make sure that we've got an eye on both of those pieces. So as you look at this across the district, we have in math and science especially, we significantly exceeded the expectations for growth as a district. That's that dark blue or dark gray bar, if you will. In language arts, we made progress similar to the state. So we did not exceed it, we made progress similar to the state. But you can also see that we've got some red bars up there that are a cause for concern in mathematics, grades 4 and 5, and then also 8th grade in language arts. And so again, as we look at not only the achievement piece, but that growth, what are we doing to support all our learners so that we can accelerate that growth? Because that's how you change that achievement. If you've got a gap in achievement and everybody grows a year, that gap is still there. You've got to accelerate that growth. So differentiation, really digging into, again, meeting students where they are, how might we be able to accelerate that growth? Those are some of the conversations that we are having. But we still earn 5 stars as a district with this one. Gap closing. So in gap closing, what the gap closing does is it looks at the performance of various subgroups.
There is no comparison on that growth versus similar districts. It's just state.
So on gap closing, ODE sets specific thresholds for each of our subgroups. And then based on whether we met or did not meet, we get scores for the gap closing. So we're looking at, now we're digging down to the different subgroups of our students. So we earn points in each category, for lack of a better term, for our subgroups. So when you go to the,
You can shut the door.
so Mr. Ballard, you asked about the progress piece. We also see that showing up now in gap closing. So we have 2 new measures in gap closing: math progress or math growth, and language arts progress or language arts growth. So those are new. So when you look here across the district, you can see from achievement, we met the achievement goal in every subgroup, which is a huge accomplishment across all of our subgroups. But look at that growth in language arts. So that red line indicates the goal, if you will, for growth in language arts. You can see that we only met that in 1 out of the 9 subgroups. So this is new data for us this year. And so digging into who are those students, what does that look like? What supports may be in place or may not be in place for our learners to ensure that not only are we achieving like we see on the left, but we are growing like we see on the right. We see the same thing in math in terms of having an achievement and a growth goal. This document, I can't forward it now.
Trying to help out, sorry.
You click back on it, it should probably.
On the, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
There.
Okay.
I'll just sit right here.
All right, so once again, huge accomplishment there from achievement perspective that we met the goal for each of the subgroups. That's big in terms of that achievement piece. Looking at the goal on the growth, again, it's that red line. We met that goal in all but 2 subgroups in mathematics. So the growth on the mathematics side of things is significantly better than the growth on the language arts side of things. And so again, we are in the process, since this is new information, of digging in and taking a look at what specific subgroups, what are those students, what does that look like in terms of our programming. This is where math assessments can come into play, because that math lets us know what students are ready to learn, so that can inform our practice as well. The other part of gap closing, on the left are English language learners. They are far above the goal for language proficiency. I mean, look at that red dot and then look at how far we are. Emily Williams, our ESOL coordinator, actually got an email from the state congratulating us on the English learners and how far above they are at that goal for language proficiency. So huge shout out to our ESOL friends. They're doing a fantastic job. On the graduation component, we've got the goal met in all subgroups except students with disabilities, but that's because we have students who defer their graduation. Now, I got good news for you, friends. In the past, yes, in the past, ODE had a random rule that said if you got below 70% for any subgroup in either graduation, math achievement, or language arts achievement, you could not get an A, no matter what. Even if everything building up to it was an A, they gave you an automatic demotion. That is gone. We no longer get the automatic, I know, right? So we wrote letters, a lot of districts around wrote letters, we talked to congressmen, and so that has been changed. So that is huge, because now we're not getting penalized for having an amazing program that supports our students who defer graduation. So that's giant. That's giant.
Can we just point out that many of those students are able to graduate?
Oh, yes.
In both grades, they have the ability to graduate, but if they do, they then cannot access those transition services, which is sometimes the equivalent of college for them and training. And so there's a necessary.
It absolutely is
for them
necessary
to do that.
That's
Even
exactly
though
right.
they are able to graduate, they're not missing credits, they're been educated, they could walk.
They could.
Not just, excuse me, not walk, they could graduate, get a diploma, but then they might not get a job.
Exactly.
I will make sure in our next state legislators, I know this
This
was
is huge.
brought up.
It's a really big.
It's
deal.
over and over and over.
Yeah, to see a change, it's been listening.
Yeah, so
And
we're really excited about that.
And we're doing the right thing. We have good transition programs here. We're doing it right. You're getting things.
That's exactly right.
That's
Sarah.
not right.
Yeah, so hugely excited about that. Awesome. The other part of gap closing is the gifted indicator. We're going to have a lot more information on this at the board retreat. But in general, we did meet the goal in value added, which is growth. So we're growing our gifted learners. Also in performance index, you can see we had a possible 118.028 out of a possible 120. Pretty impressive there. We did not meet the goal in gifted identification versus the services met, which is not a new thing in Sycamore land. That is something that we have been working on consistently as well. So when you look at that, you can see just that gap in terms of the students that are identified and then the students that are receiving services. And this is something that Ms. Jackson and Ms. Tompkins are really taking a look at, just our overall service delivery model for gifted and how might we serve more students, not in service to a state report card. I just want to be really clear on that. Not in service of getting this check on the state report card, but in service of making sure that we're just doing right by our students and providing opportunities for students to continue to learn and grow and be exposed to those program opportunities. So lots more information coming from them on both of
Like,
those.
I'm excited about that. Can I ask one quick question though? Is that particular indicator related at all to, there was this big push, like right before the pandemic. 2019, there was a program that the state had where educators could get a certificate in order to be considered qualified to teach learners. There was a big push in a lot of school districts to do that. And when we looked at our school district, we had a fair number of teachers. In our elementary schools, all of our gifted teachers were actually like qualified. They had the right certificate and everything to teach for us to quote get credit for those gifted learners being taught by a gifted educator. What have we done as a district to move towards more of our educators having that qualification?
So a couple of things. That specifically does not play. So whether or not a teacher has their gifted endorsements or the HQPD that we can serve gifted students, that doesn't necessarily play directly into this. It does. So in order for a teacher for us to say that we're serving students, they need to have their GIS or the HQPD. So now as a district, I will commend Green. There are many teachers at Green who have gone through the gifted endorsement program through Xavier and now have the gifted endorsement. That's not the only gate through which we can serve our gifted students. So we are continue to provide high quality professional development around giftedness to our teachers in the district. The state requires 60 hours over the course of 4 years. So we continue to do that as a district in order to increase the number of teachers in the district who can provide gifted services. Okay, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, graduation, 5 stars yet again. So Ms. Booter, this is what you were talking about in terms of our students who defer graduation. They still graduate, and they could have graduated before, but they defer it so that they can take advantage of our programming. This has not changed. It's still 60% of the rating comes from the 4-year grads, and then the other 40% comes from the 5-year grads. So when you look at that, our students who defer graduation, the fact that we have 98.2% graduating is significant, absolutely amazing. Again, comparing us across the state, very similar to our similar districts. Those are the same ones that were identified. So still really just doing a great job of making sure that all of our students are walking across that stage. Early literacy. So in the early literacy component, again, we got 5 stars. Fantastic job by our elementary buildings. Thank you. What we find in early literacy is a little bit of a change. So we scored high in both proficiency on the 3rd grade reading and also promotion 4th grade. By the way, the intent of the 3rd grade reading guarantee is to make sure that all kids are proficient before they get to 4th grade. We have 100% of our 3rd graders moving on to 4th grade. So the intent of the law, we're not going to out of work. Fantastic. You will see up there that there is a part highlighted in yellow, improving K-3 literacy, that says, it's not rated. So that measure will kick in or not kick in every year, depending on the percentage of kindergartners who score off track when we test them in the fall. So if we have more than 10% of our kindergartners coming to us that score off track, then that measure kicks in and we're evaluated on that measure. If we have less than 10% of our kindergartners coming to us off track, then that measure does not kick in. So this past year, we had less than 10% of our kindergartners off track, so that did not kick in. Now, if you think about this, if you remember across the history of this indicator, when you look across the state, all those districts that got A's in this,
And less.
they had the not rated. Just about every district that did have to use that component did not get an A because of the problematic progression of, we use KRE in kindergarten, then we use an MPG, math, primary grades in math in first grade, and we use math in grade 2. So you're not really comparing apples to apples for that on track, off track. Mr. Comer, you got a question I can see.
No, I was just, this one was super clear what you just said on the history. I was trying to remember when was the last time we were under 10%? What did we do that delivered that?
Well, here's the thing, it used to be 5%. So there's that, yes, yes. But
So that's what's changed.
well, that's one
The
thing.
goal line.
Well, here's the whole line move, but here's another thing that changed, that we did last year that we're not gonna be able to do this year. In the past, we had until early November, like November 1st, to assess our kindergarten students. So when we talked with other districts, that was not really high in this area, we asked them, what are some things we're doing? Like, we don't assess those students until like late October, so that way we have the opportunity as a district to instruct them before we test them. So we did that last year. Okay, well, not only did the measure change, but now the rules changed. We have to assess kids within the first 20 days of school. So no longer can we defer that testing component till the end of November or the end of October like it used to. Now that testing has to occur in the first 20 days of school. So that's going to be a change next year.
I mean, at the end of the day, when I've looked at this in past years, the fact that we can get to 100% for fourth grade, it's the really things that matter, the thing that matters the most. The
Agreed.
mathematics behind scoring this on this improving, it was almost impossible to hit the improving
Exactly.
the way that they did the mathematics behind it. The do we think, and where my question was going, I wasn't expecting the 5 to 10%. I didn't recall that, which is quite frankly helpful and not misrepresenting the quality that we're delivering
Oh,
here.
absolutely.
But my question was, we've also invested buildings into more preschool classrooms. Is that preschool education helping us? So historically, are we about the same percent? Are we seeing an improvement in the percent? You know, the fact that it went from 5 to 10, great, but are we seeing any benefit from the preschool program helping us?
The struggle with that is that not all of our students go to our preschool program.
Understand?
Right. So parsing out our preschool programming and looking at those students, that's the question that you're asking, correct? Like, how are the Sycamore preschool students faring across the years? Is that what you're asking?
Kind of. My question is, it seems important that we get everyone to the fourth grade level,
Agreed.
but it also, I think that's the primary.
Okay.
But having students that start in kindergarten at a good spot, it seems like an important measure that the state has put down, 10%. What are we doing? What can we do? And how do we help? And I guess my first question was, historically, what percentage have we been in kind of a steady state? And the fact that it's always been, have we always been under 10% and always above 5%? That's kind of my question.
Okay, I'll dig into
We
that.
can take that offline, but what I'm trying to see is, are we making, or was it just a change? Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Yeah.
And
Perfect.
I'd just like to weigh
Yes.
in on that a little bit. Having had 2 children go through Sycamore early intervention program, that is where your students with disabilities who very, I mean, it's more likely that they might not meet that criteria in kindergarten, might getting educated, because that's where they're supposed to go.
Right.
And then also we have a lot of English language learners in that program. Those are our typical kids. So you have 2 groups that would have potentially significant challenges in kindergarten with that test in the first 20 days being there. So I absolutely think that should be looked at. And I would probably assume that it has been very helpful to early intervention. There's plenty of data to show how important it is. And the other thing I want to say is we have a Help Me Grow program here as well. So I know it's not part of our preschool program, but that is where we're also teaching children in preschool,
Right.
how to read and how to learn their numbers and letters, things so that when they come to pre-kindergarten, they're ready. So yeah, look at it, but
Yeah,
it has to be making a major impact.
comment about with the expansion of the preschool, we'll have to start looking at that data intentionally. The implementation does happen this year, so it'll be, a couple of years of data should tell us, hey, does it have any impact?
It's a great point.
Sometimes people ask me, does building new buildings help us at all as a district? This would be a great soundbite to highlight if we can make that claim.
Love it. Yes, awesome. Thank you. So I just wanted to give
I'm sorry.
I just want to give this bumper its hands off the computer. I just want to give a huge shout out to our buildings. I mean, if you visualize that, like, put yourself back into the day of those little gold foil stars that sparkle, right? I mean, our buildings are doing a phenomenal job in so many areas. And are there areas in which we can grow? Absolutely. But man, we need to celebrate the great work that they are doing and just the intentional efforts, like I said, of every single teacher in this district and our building administrators who are just every single day and they're doing the best that they can for their kids. Just super, super proud just to be in their space. So when we look at celebrations and opportunities, we have a lot to celebrate this year. Some of the things I already mentioned, but some of the other pieces, we're one of only 3 districts in Hamilton County to even get all 5 stars. We met goals in the strategic plan. Montgomery, our elementary school, scored higher than the max BI calculation for districts for their building. Every building got 5 stars in both achievement and gap closing. That's giant. Our ESOL friends are knocking it out of the park. And again, 100% of our 3rd graders promoted to 4th grade. Holy mollies. Great stuff going on. Now, do we still have some opportunities? Absolutely we do, right? So looking back at some of that pre-pandemic data, that's why I keep going back to that, because that was the last kind of true measure that we had, right? So how might we be able to meet and exceed that next year? The fact that we're already pretty close is pretty impressive. Loving the fact that we are looking at our ELA course of study at the same time as this. That's not a coincidence. There's a reason why we started with language arts for the course of study work. Number 1, it's the basis of all things. But also number 2, we looked at our data going, this is where we need to start, right? Really digging into, again, our geometry component as well. Scores are going up, but we're still not at that 80%. What does that look like? Our progress, some pieces to take a look at with our math and language arts, then also our gap closing piece. So we do still have some opportunities where we can grow, but the success that our buildings are experiencing right now, that our students, the learning that is happening with our students coming off of 2 years of interrupted learning is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So that's all we have. I would like to publicly, again, just thank all of our teachers, administrators, and support staff, right? Our support staff are super important. Those bus drivers are the first people those kids see in the morning. They help set the tone for how that kid's going to have their day play out. So just super, super thankful for the entire team. Look at you just took down. I guess I'm done. Dr. Davis.
So, thank you very much, Mrs. Wagner, for this conference, for adding in. I completely agree, and as with the entire board, that there's so much to celebrate. So please, building administrators and Mrs. Grace, pass on to our educators and all of our staff. Congratulations on the board. But data is only as good as what you use it for. And you can use that data to So you set the benchmark really high.
I also want to publicly thank the board as well, because your support during the pandemic and the intentionality with which you supported our teachers and our students during the pandemic, especially that year of virtual and regular classroom components, that is a huge component of why we are close to pre-pandemic status. We did not have as many significant gaps as some other districts because of the intentionality and support of the board. So I want to publicly thank you all.
Thanks, Ms. Waver. Just, and I want to echo Mr. congratulations to everyone in this district for the ratings that we got out of this. I know we're always looking at the opportunities for improvement, so you hear the tone here, I think it should be first and foremost, congratulations and well done. Following on that, on the opportunity areas, what would support look like from the board? Is there anything that you need from us to further, this continuous improvement mindset, which I love hearing? But what is it that we can do to help?
That would be great. Something to bring back to that tree.
Yes, absolutely.
We are looking at individual moments. Having a conversation. Come up with anything. Do some brainstorming.
I don't think it'd be 15 minutes.
I would also like to say thank you to all the teachers, all the educators, all of the school nurses, all the bus drivers, all the parents, all the families. Yes, I do believe, I agree, I believe just having that flexibility, some students were virtual, some students were in person. It reduced the numbers in the school buildings, which was really helpful. It reduced numbers in virtual. And everyone worked so hard. I learned 4th grade again. So I know I was there with one of those parents. So thank you, Sycamore. Thank you for all the teachers. I know that this was, was on all of you. So thank you for all your hard work. And I agree. Thank you for, I wasn't on the board at that time, but thankful to the board and to our treasurer for thinking of how to figure out how to make that work for our district financially. It was a good investment and it paid off, right? So here we see it. And I do agree, if you need something from us to help you be successful, we want to know. And we obviously expect that you'll tell that to Mr. Lewis and Mrs. Wagner. But please let us support you so that you can continue on this trend, so that we can keep these, keep this and grow our students who are having challenges, right? And get that individualization and differentiation that they need, whether it's a gifted student who doesn't have a disability, whether it's a kid who has a disability, whether it's someone in the middle who needs support and individualization as well.
Look at that. Thank
Thank you. And now by 30.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Lewis, moving on.
And just really quickly, building administrator, we know that you have other duties to attend to, so thank you for being here. We completely understand. We won't take offense that you need to get up and walk out. So. They're welcome to stay, but I can see that they all start twitching because kids are in their buildings and they need to be there. So, yes, please take
I
off.
look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
So we're excited to give you an overview. Give you an overview of just the previous hiring season. Share some statistics with you and share information with you about our human resources, and we'll talk a little bit about where we're headed down the road. But Dr. Davis, thank you for leading this.
On slide there, you can see the department positions that we filled. So we had 5 administrative new hires, 3 transfers, 48 data new hires, 38 transfers. Classified hires.
Well, we hired certified. Where those are hired.
And so, she's our administrative new hires. Got director of technology, the new OSS coordinator, that was an additional position. You can see that on your home. And then looking at our administrative team, this is what that looked like. So minus the new position that was created, our budget came out less than 35,600, or less than what it was for that 2021. And then this just breaks that down so you can see the people, what they are making once last. That new position took us over like 50. Was one created.
And it's not lost on us that we still have Mr. Fritz doing a data roll this year, and we'll have to analyze what does that look like going forward. But I really appreciate the board's commitment to not allowing this to get out of here so much as knowledge and finding great support from strong, allowing the strong to lead the team, but kind of being there in the shadows in the background, assisting, helping transition successfully.
I think that year of overlap is really important, and I talked about it for many years on the board about the data position, how we're going to fill that.
And he's working really hard at getting our data warehouse set up, and he has duties and responsibilities that he's conducting, but I want to say to the community, it is abnormal that we would have a lengthy transition like that, but when you have someone that's been in a role for 20 plus years, I think that's a little different.
And I will also add, learn to learn.
And then this is just showing our transfers. And then as we're looking at our certified hires, I know you guys have asked for. This is what it looks like in terms of new hires.
So we're not seeing that teachers are leaving. You look at nationwide, you hear teachers are leaving because of the pandemic. We're actually seeing that there's less teachers leaving than we've seen.
Correct. And then if you look at 1920 year, when we had a lot of hiring as a district before that pandemic year, we didn't get rid of those people. So we have to keep that in mind as well. And so that's why that next year was lower, because we hired up to in the year. And then our numbers. And then here are your 12 positions that were created. So you have the gifted, that's a teacher on special assignment, the teaching and learning supervisor, student ESS, and the PA counselors to all the elementary. So that's five. Preschool staff, and then the third grade at Blue Ash, that helped be too small at that helped in terms of transferring that over. I'm sorry.
You're on a slide.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did on my screen, no, in your screen. So, and then the ELA range, they were trying to model their fifth grade after sixth grade. How that, so they can have that continuity range. And then that junior high one, that was on a replacement contract.
I think important things to point out, the two MTSS coordinators, 2-year commitment.
And that's right.
And the preschool we knew about as part of our master facility plan and talking about expansion of our preschool. Some of the other things are number driven. Orchestra, we're seeing incredible enrollment in orchestra that we have not seen. It is fantastic. It's a good problem to have. When you walk into, like I walked into the intermediate school orchestra room and it is packed. And they have it's full, but they also parse out by the different instrument, how they set up the I'll say bells. I don't the schedule green doesn't work on bells for so that's the way it works in my head. But their class period of being in orchestra is what instrument they play. So it's still that.
Two other things I would just add, the position at the contract past, the NTSS position, in addition to them being a 2-year position. The counselors are 2 additional FTEs there, we are utilizing this year of our master planning to needs for our students. As Mr. Lewis had noted, that plan for the expansion of the preschool program. Dr. Davis had noted that the Blue Ash third grade was offset by change at Montgomery. And then I think we also have that
I know I've seen them. I've not seen this slide, but just wanna, what is it, what is TLSA? Teacher on that is not teacher who, is full-time out of the classroom. And then can you remind me of the acronym MTSS, multi-year. And then PLA, and green, and then IS is. Thank you.
The other thing I think it's worth mentioning is, you didn't list them up here, but there were positions based on either just, lack of interest, lack of numbers that we have. A high school business position. There's a constant flow of looking at what are our needs versus what maybe are things that we don't need or maybe need to move along from. I will say, we are working with our building administrators to take a hard look at our master scheduling process. Spending year one really digging in and learning, and I think I kind of gave before the heads up that, as a new superintendent, as a lot of new administrators on the team, it's important to spend your first year observing and listening, paying attention to what we saw. I think what we saw was sometimes we let the schedule drive the need for people and not the other way around. The schedule in and of itself and the way we do things should not be what drives the number of people we need. We need to look at the classes that are necessary. We need to look at the electives that we have. We can't let those decisions in a negative way. So we have several master schedules that are working hard to how can we make sure that we're not just overextending ourselves past where we need to, and can we do it more efficiently, effectively, without losing any courses. So we're going to have a lot of opportunity. There are a large number of people that are, but I've already been notified by several that have said they're retiring this year. When we have retirements, it's a great opportunity to look at, okay, what's the need? And looking at, the other thing we're taking a hard look at is what's the capacity of, what capacity are people teaching? Are they teaching multiple bells a day? And what are they doing with multiple bells a day? Or does it need to be relooked at? And how does that create necessary structure for our schedule? So the teams are digging in. We'll be able to come back to you with a report probably after the first of the year of knowing exactly what we're going to teach at, how those schedules have been adjusted to impact our staff. We're excited to do the work. Everybody that's been involved in the work is really thinks there's a lot of opportunity there. You bet.
And I'd just like to point out that I think it's wonderful that we have a counselor and a nurse. I know that that's common in the state where they have that. So that's really.
And then this is something in our classified hiring. And as we move forward, I know you wanted the diversity data, and so this is how it looked like if we were hiring. So the number of candidates for each of the positions, whether it's female, male, and then what resulted in terms of what the grade. Same thing with our certified staff, all the positions that we posted, breaking it down in terms of number of candidates we had, diversity of those by gender and race, and who we don't want to hire.
Dr. Davis, I know one of the things you talked to us about last year was how you were going to try to attract more diverse candidates. Why?
This is not an issue of our candidates applying, this is an issue of the practices of what they're applying, we're not interviewing, we're not hiring them. That's the issue. So the number of applicants that we have who are diverse who apply for our different positions is pretty commensurate with what higher education is showing in terms of the program. What we're doing here is the issue
Candace, the number on the far bottom right, that one, is that the summary of how many diverse candidates were hired in each? Well, you see a systemic issue.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had 4 policy changes in 1995, and we just had that policy. It's not been something that we are giving out. Actually,
You have here the number of candidates. These are the candidates that were interviewed or not?
those are the number of candidates who applied.
So we don't know the numbers, how many were interviewed. She said the mismatch is how many we actually. You just said that we can get the application, but if we're not interviewing them, so is that an area where we need to improve? I don't see that data. I don't know if
I
we're
don't have that
interviewing a
data.
bunch of people and
And
then.
then you see the data I have, I don't have that. Data because, the building that individually on their own, so that's something that we're changing our practice. We attempted to put some things in place. I had vetted initially part of the hiring season. I had picked all the candidates, kind of put them in a spreadsheet for the future. One had the actual license for that position, had the experience, et cetera. Those who had an application in but had not submitted were not on there, et cetera. There was major pushback in just vetting that you're getting qualified candidates who actually have the licensure. So that part of the hiring practice was approved because of the pushback, just to vet the candidates. And so me saying, here's a list of minorities for you to consider, we're not there. I can't even get you to consider the list that I gave you of who's qualified, who's actually applied. And so that's the work we need to do.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said? I didn't
Sure.
say that again. I heard it, but now I need to like.
At the beginning of the hiring season, when we post positions, data there. So let's say for an ELA position at the junior high, you had 155 candidates. I looked at their applications, and so sorted out the ones who had not submitted. I didn't go through those who they had officially submitted by the closing date of the position. And then I looked at their licensure, make sure the ones had their licensure. Then I looked at the experience and qualifications of that position. So let's say out of 155, there were only 100 remaining who were viable to be interviewed. That is then shared with each administrator for their various positions. There was pushback among the administration in terms of me vetting those candidates. Them not being able to see them all 155. I only gave them the ones that were viable. They wanted to see all of them. So that pushback resulted in no longer doing that practice of vetting them. And so they just had a free for all. When I say I don't have data in terms of who they interviewed, after that, I was no longer involved. It was only a full.
Maybe I can help summarize just, so change is hard. Hard for administrators to have full autonomy to hire whoever they wanted, whatever they wanted. And we still value, absolutely value their employee process. What we're going to do, and again, that was my first hiring season, and we walked into it, kind of eyes wide open, learning a little bit. And when we started to make some changes that, you have to help people understand why are you asking for these changes, and that's on you. You do a very good job of helping them understand. Hey, we have some goals that we would like to see accomplished. Here's how I think we need to get there. And Kelly, I'm sorry that Kelly's not here because this is something that she's ingrained in me, is you have to help people understand the why before you just make a shift or a change. Hiring season came upon us, they started hiring people, and you can see the clear results. We didn't, and when we talked about in March of last year at board meeting, some of our hiring goals, we didn't accomplish some of those goals. When you look at trying to bring in, yes, we can bring in a more diverse population of candidates, but if you're not vetting them, looking at their qualifications and potentially hiring some of them, then we're not meeting our goals. We are going to provide much more clear direction heading into hiring season this year, including some of the ways that we can reduce some of the work from our administrators. When you look at candidate pools, when you look at, that takes an inordinate amount of time. But we don't want to be wasting our time interviewing candidates that are not viable from a standpoint of, let's say that I need to hire a high school English teacher. If you're only, your certification, that because people can go in and apply, they might not even have the right certification. Let's say they're K through 8,
but I didn't notice it when I interviewed them. I just wasted an interview slot on someone that's not viable because we're not going to go and pursue a special certification for that person just because they're a nice person. So, you know, these are some of the, I'll say, past practices that we're trying to remove. You know, I think there's also, and you all have experienced this, there's probably been some, you know, like we do value, and we tend to have a lot of people that either have gone to Sycamore, lived in Sycamore, come back and want to work here, which is great. But are they the best candidate for the position at that time? So it's balancing all those different things and making sure that we're getting the best candidate pools that we can get. I think the other thing that you can notice from Dr. Davis's data is, you know, we were hearing, well, we're not, you know, there are districts that probably aren't getting very good candidate pools. I mean, a second grade position at Blue Ash got 195 candidates. That would be overwhelming if I'm Mrs. Combs trying to look at 195 candidates. So I think the idea that we had was, how can our HR department vet through some of that and provide you a folder of applicants that we vetted to say, here are 100 that are not viable. Here are the ones that are viable. Now you can take a look at that number. You don't need to see 195. But
Yeah, it just.
there was some pushback on, a little bit of pushback, because it was, again, it was a change in our practice.
Right, but it was a bad practice. I mean, I would say, I think that's a bad practice, and I think, why do we have, you know, an HR expert who, you know, I mean, it's really, like you said, Dr. Davis, going through the list, is like, if that candidate is qualified, you know, that's just like a first pass. Why would we give that to the building leader to do that? That seems not a good use of resources, I don't think. I think we need to move that so that you have a say in who are the qualified candidates that our building administrators can look at.
And we'll be providing that. Again, when you change it, you don't tell them why. And that was my fault. You know, I was in the same mindset that, you know, I need an HR professional to look at that and deem that, hey, this is the candidate who we needed. You know, it was too quick of a shift, and change process has to take a little time, and I should have slowed down to speed up. So we'll make sure that changes.
I'm open ear, Mr. Lewis and Dr. Davis, for suggestions on how we change. When I look at the data, I'm going to say a strong word here. It looks like bias to me, whether it's unintentional. I assume it's unintentional, not intentional, but it looks like bias in our hiring practices. And that's concerning to me.
And this next slide just shows all the demographic data. So you can see from what the information I provided to you last year when I started. So just want to be tracking that. So this is where we are. There is some movement because our classified staff, we have had a few more minority classified staff, which are helping our numbers there. But in terms of our certified and our teaching staff, that's an area that we need to work on.
Mr. Comfort, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on your last comment?
If I look at the data, just raw data.
Yeah.
And I look at when we went to the welcome, and I'm sure we hired qualified teachers. This is not about anyone that we've hired that wasn't qualified. I see we have processes in place that are mathematically inconsistent. When you look at the number of candidates and the number of hires, it would not follow unless there was, and I'm just going to make the assumption, an unintentional bias at play in our processes. And that honestly concerns me, because at the end of the day, one of the things that I have heard and learned is that students are benefited, and this is all about the students' benefit, from a environment where they have a staff and a teaching that looks someone they can identify with, not every, but some. And representationally, we are very different in our profile in our teaching staff versus our student population. And I think that's an improvement opportunity.
You know, that's something that our team will talk about for the hiring season, to ensure that, yeah, everybody's in the same mindset. Because when you go in and hire, you're not hiring 20 teachers at a time, all sitting in a room. I don't, to your point, it's not an intentional bias on anyone's part. You know, Dr. Davis and I have talked about this. You start to hire based on, you know, your comfortability of a position, and then you start looking at, okay, who are the things that, or what are the things that I'm looking for based on this position? And I don't think it's an intentional, like, I'm ignoring these other factors. I think it's just, again, we've got to look at all the considerations, all the factors. We got to bring qualified candidates into the mix and really have a mindset about, you know, changing some of our past practices. It's going to take time, and we knew that when we started this conversation, you know, previously, but you know, I think it's a charge that we can do better, and our team is committed to always improving. So from our building administrators to our assistant principals to the people at this table, we're always committed to improving. So we'll make that movement.
I would like to say that, you know, when I started on this board in January, one of the very first subjects that we brought up during our board meeting was our desire to see our staff diversify, right? We want to look like the community that we live in, the students that we serve. We believe in diversity and inclusion, obviously, we care very deeply about that. And I feel like we are having the right conversations. We are having hard conversations, and we're addressing it. And ultimately, it's us. It's both of you and all of us on this board. It's up to us, right? It's not the building principals. It's us. It's on us. And so if you say that we are biased, it's us. So we have to change that. And I do believe that we as board have been addressing this issue, and we have been trying to work on this issue. And you're right, Mr. Lewis, change takes time, and there are some things that we're working through to correct that, to course correct that. And I think there's evidence of that we are working on that. And we have to continue to do that. It's no one's fault but our own, right? We have to do that. And we are committed to that. So let's do it. I mean, we have to figure out a way, and we'll keep supporting you to do that, and Mr. Lewis to do that, and we as a board.
When you say it's no one's fault but our own, and it's not the building administrators, can you share with me what you mean that the recommendation comes from the building administrator? I don't hand them a list of who they can choose. So
you're saying that the building administrators are the reason for the bias?
It's a process.
I'm saying that I'm not blaming the building.
Yeah,
administrator,
even if we
saying
said that,
they're
it's still
the reason
on
for
us.
the bias. I'm saying that the recommendation comes from them. I am not the one who makes the recommendation for the hire. I can only hire what has been interviewed and given to me. The bias is in the systemic practices of this district. And so whether it's intentional or not, that is what it is. Right. And so, but I can't, if a candidate is not given to me to hire, that.
Let me pause for a second, because this is not really a conversation that we probably need to have in a public board meeting. I can appreciate, you know, all the passion, and I think what I hear in this room is there's passion and intentionality about how do we do better. And we are going to look at continuous improvement of our team, regardless of it is process. It's how we make our process more inclusive of our candidate pool, our interview process, making sure that we're getting candidates to our principals and that they're getting a diverse candidate pool to look at. So I will commit to you that next year's hiring season will look different, and we'll have a different direction than the previous one. I needed to live through it a little bit before I don't want to say make too many changes, but you do have to live through it. I think there is recognition on our building staff that they recognize they want to get more diverse like their student population. So I will make sure that I communicate that message, not only that you share, Mrs. Bitter, about, you know, the passion of the board and making sure that we're a more inclusive, diverse district and a reflective teacher population, staff population of our student population. So that is something that, you know, Dr. Davis and I will be talking with the Asian leaders again on Friday. That is something, again, that's just another group, another avenue to try to build capacity for finding qualified candidates for our positions. So We will make that commitment. We will work hard with our team to have that conversation. We'll have those internal difficult conversations. So thank you for your feedback. We appreciate the time to present on this topic, and then we'll get tight on our schedule. So
Look forward to update on process and the results. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next item, moving on to master facility plan update.
Yeah, so we have some construction happening around the district. They just shoot you a few updates on it. Typically at our evening meeting is when we go into the big debrief. So I'm just going to give you a couple little nuggets of information and a little bit of discussion as well. And so first off, just wanted to share with you that we have some incredible progress.
You're not like dirt pictures. So we were really concerned.
I know, right? Like it actually should concern you, it should. It doesn't look like much, but for all of us that have been struggling with transportation way before me for many, many years, seeing the site development work happening on that site is pretty incredible. And so they've actually got the pad laid, not concrete, but the area laid for the building. We're hoping to actually receive the pre-engineered building in February, which means we are right on track. I know that many, many people out there would like to see rain. We are loving this weather right now. So we hope that there's no rain in the near future so we can get this site completely scoped out, ready to go. The other thing I would mention as well is that originally, as we started to plan this out, we knew that the city of Blue Ash would be investing in a road that'd be connecting Grooms to Reed Hartman. As part of the demolition plan of that site in coordination with the developer, we are working in coordination with the city to actually have that road up until the end of the transportation compound, so not fully through the property, actually developed by the time we open the facility. So we'll have a new connection at Grooms Road, new road from the city in there. So we're really excited about that and working with the city on all that work. So more to come there, but just wanted to give you an update on what's happening out on that site and encourage you to take a drive out there and see it. It's pretty cool. Here we've got the junior high, just a few pictures to show you. I think that it's really interesting in that, you know, we drive by the junior high a lot, we see a lot, and it looks like there's changes on the outside, but it really are significant work that's being done on the inside. In fact, we're starting to paint some of the finished drywall in the academic areas. The casework and cabinetry is going into some of those areas. So it actually looks like a school now. So I wanted to show you some of these things. But one of the major areas that we're focused on at the junior high right now is related to the site development in the area. So we know that we have to take down the old building and everything that's going into that. But one of the pieces that we've been having discussions around is the tennis courts. So at the junior high, there were four courts that were slated to be into what we said is the base bid. So when we bought the package, we were replicating 4 of the courts over to where the old transportation facility was located. So kind of think just north of the stadium in that area. For those that are into tennis or know anything about tennis, you need 5 courts in order to play a match. And so 4 courts presents somewhat of a problem for us in regards to having a fully functioning facility on that site. And so in the midst of these conversations, there have been requests of, hey, could we add a 5th court? By adding a 5th court, there are really 2 paths forward with that. One path would be to locate them where they were previously located in the back corner of the property. The problem with that, when we ran down that path to look at that, was that the amount of site development work that would have to be done on that side of the property due to detention basins, retention, all that, it just really wasn't a feasible, cost-effective model. So then the question was, could we potentially add a 5th court in front of the maintenance shed or maintenance building? It's not a shed, it's an actual building up front there. That is absolutely a possibility. However, the challenges with that are that you probably still couldn't hold a match because you don't have a line of sight to that 5th court. You would have the 4 courts in front of the stadium, you'd have the maintenance building, and then you'd have the 5th court kind of located. So in the midst of all these conversations, doing our best to try to make the right decision. And just to be clear, there was not a conversation about adding a 5th court as part of the bond. That would be either fundraised money or we would look at a capital improvement down the line. It was just the capacity of if we wanted to add a 5th court, how might we do that in the future? Going down this path, we obviously wanted to get the feedback from those that are experts in that area, Mr. Teets and his team, to say, what do we desire? We know that we have to make significant capital improvements down the line at the high school to those courts, which is in the 5-year forecast that you guys, you had all seen. And so what we wanted to do is just better understand, hey, what might this look like? And so I'll pass this actually to Beth to talk a little bit more about that. But part of it was from Mr. Teets and his team of saying, is there a way that we could think different about leveraging the dollars that we're going to be setting aside for the refurbishment and redevelopment of the sites at the high school, and what we might do with some of the money that we have at the junior high for those 4 courts.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the additional pieces of information from Mr. Teets' perspective is that he works fairly closely with the city of Blue Ash and their facilities. So as he was thinking this through, one of the suggestions he made was, is there a possibility to have some kind of partnership with the city of Blue Ash when we're looking at a way to, as opposed to an overhaul of our high school tennis courts, thinking about the right kind of facility for junior high student athletes. Is there a potential for a partnership with the city of Blue Ash? Because, you know, lo and behold, they are also thinking about not only refurbishing the tennis courts they have, but potentially expanding the number that they have. That's something very different than anything we've ever done in terms of shared facilities with the city. So we did at least throw out a, you know, what if, is there any interest at all in doing something like that before we pursue it any further? The city is looking at the potential to expand their facilities. So there is a possibility of doing that. I think there are a lot of questions, however, in terms of how would it be funded, who would fund it, how would we share operations, can they even accommodate having not only a junior high, but probably a high school team utilizing those facilities at the same time as the residents, or maybe not the residents. So there are a lot of questions around that. However, I do think it is something that we would like to pursue. Number one, because our tennis coach has said, hey, this might be, give us some other opportunities for how we sponsor tournaments, giving really good facilities to our kids, and having what we think could be a really vital partnership. So I guess our question for you all today is, there's a lot of work to be done with even thinking through that concept, but we would like to have at least an initial conversation with someone other, probably the city manager or the assistant city manager, to even see if that's a possibility, and all of it, start to even kind of think through all of those things that we need to do to make something like that happen. We don't want to start the process if we think that there's just not an openness to that possibility down the road.
I certainly think that, from my perspective, we have great partnerships with the cities. If we can work out all those fine print details and provide better facilities for our students, and work out the logistics and the financial piece of it, I think it's worth starting the conversation.
I think what we'll need to do is, if there's an agreement just for us to have that initial conversation, I think what we can do then is bring back an overview of those kinds of parameters that the city would have, and we'll find out that there are deal breakers just from the start. And there may be, but I think those are all things, at least, I think the more we can partner and utilize community resources, I think that's a good thing. We just have to also make sure we still meet the needs of our kids and our program. So we're going to have some potential deal breakers and programs.
And part of the conversation was the desire to keep the courts at the high school, just not make the large investment into redoing them, but just maintain them as a practice facility versus a competition facility. And then the other thing I would add as well, talking with Mr. Teets and his team, is that there are only 2 venues in the area outside of the Linder Center up by Mason So Mason High School, I believe it's St. X, that have 16 courts that really can host a tournament. That's kind of that magic number. And so being able to have a facility and work it out in a partnership, collaborative agreement with the city, that allows us the opportunity to host larger events as well, if desired.
I like the idea of community partnerships, not only for us to partner with the outside community, but in the outside, the community to come to us, because we have these amazing facilities that we have invested in. But I completely agree that, how does that look if it at all stops our kids from being able to participate in tennis, or have what they need, or tennis and pickleball are so popular right now, it's hard to even get on a court.
Yeah.
And people will come from all over the city, from the whole area, to go use courts. Doesn't matter where you live, you'll go there. So that's something to consider. I mean, if we build this, people will come, and we might not want everyone coming to a public community, court where our kids are practicing every day, or where we might need it. So I mean, I think there's some good and there's some good things and potentially some challenges that we'd have to really, really consider. But in general, I love the idea.
Okay, well, thank you for that, for at least the opportunity to have the discussion. What exactly we want on moving forward from cost parameters, operational concerns and opportunities, scheduling, and also just the impact of thinking about. I think we're still going to have to talk a bit about what we would have available. The only other thing that I did want to just comment on is overall master facility plan budget, because we are getting, we have some change orders that we're going to be considering here in just a second. Some of the things that we're looking at right now, one is we are getting really close to the closeout of Sims Elementary. We think that would be done, but we still have a lot of work over the summer. There's closing out of those contracts and potential some return of contingency funds back into the budget. We are working our way through all the green change orders for EH Green, as you see on the agenda today, and determining the that project as well. I will make you aware that district-wide contingency that we've been holding for probably a year now, from some of our soft costs we did in order to cover these change orders for green. Moved another 100,000 into that project, so we're down to about 180,000 that's district-wide contingency. I would anticipate all of that most of that will be used to finish up. That though, it's kind of amazing to me that that's what it may all be, maybe all that it takes to do that. So thinking about that, I just want to circle back and remind the board that we did at least put in our plan for capital improvements to have another $1.5 million in contingency from our cash reserves to help us with finishing those projects. So that would be my guess, and we'll continue to have those discussions with SHP, general contractors, and HGC. But that would be available primarily, I believe, for the junior high project, which I think is good to have, knowing that we haven't torn down the old building.
Are we still comfortable that $1.5 million is enough? Or is it just?
I think so. Yeah,
I think that the initial thought was we probably need some of that green as well.
Yeah, we did. I think that we've been able to come, we didn't have nearly the soil issues that we thought we would have on that access drive going in, the building's down. So we're starting to see the end kind of clear with green. So I personally, just in talking with SHP and our general contractors, we think that that amount will be fine.
Yes.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine, we're fine. Again, we just have to be very aware. We don't know what's going to happen when we start taking that junior high down. We don't know. So.
And then the other piece that we're going to be following up with you at our next board meeting is giving you an update on the moratorium and the cost projections from 50% going like that. We're still working through that process, figure out what that final, with the revised estimate.
Yeah, so I mean, I can give you a quick update on that. So we received our estimate back from HGC, which is who SHP had leveraged. And then we also got our third-party estimate back from JSL. Today, actually at 11 o'clock, HGC and JSL are in a meeting with our architectural firm to basically go over those numbers and look at where some of the differences were and where maybe JSL thought creatively about one thing where maybe HGC didn't. And so the hope when we come out of that is we'll have a better path forward, a more affordable path forward. I don't want to say we're going to have crazy savings considering the two estimates rolled about $80,000 off. But at the same rate, we're hoping that we can tailor that a little bit more. And then we've also thrown out a different proposal about the total scope of the project to see if we could get some cost savings and some time savings. Because right now it's a 12-month project and trying to decrease that total amount. So I say all that to tell you that we're having intentional conversations today at 11. Our hope is that we have everything ready so that you have it for the 19th to be able to have a really clear picture about the path forward.
Just in addition to the $1.5 million contingency from the reserves for the overall project. Currently, we have $2.5 million in earmarked in contingency potentially for the management. We're gonna look at that amount along with what was already in the bond issue, potential private funding above and beyond what the Seeger family have already provided, to see how that whole project goes. So just know, I think we're gonna have the overall projects, but we are gonna have some more to do within that. With cash reserves and a combination of private money, so that will be part of that discussion as it kind of goes today. I don't anticipate we will need any action at next week's meeting, but we'll let you know how things go this week in terms of action needed.
Can you remind me on the junior high timeline on furnishing to get those bids back? Have we bid it up? Because that's
We
still,
did.
that's still
We-
one of the big.
So October 26th, yes, it's coming up.
But that'll be, we won't know that for discussion.
No, we will not. I will tell you that we were very fortunate. There are many more companies interested in the bid than we had for green, which is hopefully a sign that things are getting better and that we'll get a big deal on it. But we just don't know how many will actually show up for bid.
It's not the summertime installs.
Yeah.
That's why.
So when we go, when we talk next week, which is just, it's hard to believe we have a board meeting already next week. But some of the things that I'm gonna need to know is where we stand with the current projects and really very realistic on where we think we might need additional funding. Because we're pretty tapped out on it, so.
And the earlier we can get the numbers or whatever you have for the natatorium would be great.
So people, just on that same, topic of possible needs, for EH Green, I will say that I've had a significant number of people reach out to me about the bathrooms at EH Green. And if it's possible that we maybe add in the boys' bathroom toilets, because we only have urinals for those. I'm sorry to talk about this in the middle of the board meeting, because it seems like a pretty strange subject, but do we only have urinals in the boys' bathroom? Are there toilets and urinals in there? Is it possible that some only have a urinal and not a toilet?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can look.
Because that is like one of those issues that is
Are we
oddly,
talking, are you referring
I know
to
that
the
we have-
restrooms that are in the pods?
yes. I know that we have a multi-use bathroom that sometimes my own children use that type of bathroom because they need that. A girls and a boys. And my understanding is that in the boys' bathroom, there is only a urinal. And so it's some kids are confused by that.
Okay.
So that's something just to look at. I thought that maybe that's
We'll take a look at it. Do you mind if?
because that could be something we might have an additional cost for. I just wanted to bring
Certainly,
it up.
it'll be an additional cost, but I just want to make sure,
like from our standpoint, like, so, and I want to try to say this gently. Sometimes we make big problems because of adults
Yeah.
versus like students. We've received no feedback from the building that they're having any operational issues,
Yeah.
but we can certainly find out what the cost would be. I do know that the individual boys restroom, because I have 2 grade school students, and the wings, there is a boys that just has a urinal, there's a girls that have a toilet, and then there's the, I don't know.
There's the multi-use
It's like the
one.
multi-use one for anyone else that has a toilet in it, but we have not had any
And they're all
operational.
singles, so every
Yeah.
one of them are singles, that way
We
you
do
don't
have
have
group
just
restrooms,
one, which
but
is.
the cafeteria.
So we're not entertaining the idea right now in this meeting about changing a bathroom that just has a urinal to a toilet.
I'm
We'll
not
just
saying,
get some-
I'm just telling you the feedback that I'm getting of, you're right, sometimes it could be that adults are having that challenge, not kids, but I just putting it out there because I'm getting enough people to come to me to talk to me about it, that I wanna just throw it out there.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, I'll get feedback from the building.
Maybe just to wrap this up, in summary, we're gonna get a good cost estimate that we trust. We're gonna have an overall, where do we stand, against all of our, construction spending overall, and then we'll understand what the funding, we have towards the auditorium, and then we'll review the gap and gap closing techniques. If I'm summarizing that for next week.
This is what this point. We'll get that to you as soon as we can.
Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you very much. My pleasure. I need a motion for the approval of change order Sycamore Junior High School construction project.
And I'll just say, Mr. Ballard, for all the change orders, just unless there's a question, we won't, for the essence of time, we won't have Mr. Lovell speak about it.
Especially when we're given this. Any questions from the board on the first one? Mrs. Weber?
Mrs. Weiss, Mrs. Bitter. Aye. Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
There's a-
Sorry, I mean, Mr. Ballard.
Aye, motion passes.
I can vote twice.
Need a motion for the
Get on
approval of
those
change,
lines.
change order of Sycamore High School exterior athletics early site package 3A.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
I,
Motion passes. I need a motion for the change orders for PH Green. intermediate construction.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lovell, would you comment anything?
Yeah, probably the one thing that I want to point out is we're trying to get all of these through. These have been on the PCO log, so we've been tracking them, so we knew these were coming. 2 of the items on here were change of directives you've already previously approved that came in under the actual amount that you approved for the change directive. So even though we don't see that we're saving money, we are saving money in the midst of these. Specific questions?
Any questions? from the board?
All is well down
Mrs. Weiss.
here.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter.
I,
Motion passes. I need a motion for the approval of change orders Sycamore High School stadium.
second,
This was just related to a soil issue when installing the field.
Choose.
Spend a lot of money.
Beta park system.
Any additional questions? Mrs. Weber?
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
I,
Mrs. Ballard.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Motion passes. I need a motion for transportation and practical.
So moved.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter. Aye. And Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
So, Treasurer's Office received notification, and I don't know why I got it, but I was glad to receive it, that the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, highest achievement in governmental accounting.
Yay.
So thank you to
Congratulations.
Mrs. Weber and her team. I know we previously had this, but I think it's worth mentioning at a board meeting, our niche report. Number 1 in the Cincinnati area district, number 2, state of Ohio, number 1 through 4 elementaries in the Cincinnati area, number 1 through 2 middle schools in the area, and number 5 high schools in the area. You know, just wow, that's all I have to say about
Marching band superior rating in Hamilton, and then, you know, as I was writing this out, they got a superior rating this weekend at their marching band competition. They qualified to perform at the OMEA finals at the end of October. Sims Elementary maintained their silver status once again, so huge congratulations to them and their PBIS status. Ohio K-12 safety grant, Mr. Foster and Mr. Lovell were able to secure $93,000 each more from that grant. There's another $500,000 pending that we have applied for, over $500,000 we have applied for. So kudos to Mr. Foster and Mr. Lovell for doing that. And then we recognized 18 recommended scholars at the high school recently. Just, you know, again, just below the National Merit semifinalists, but still very impressive to have 18 students recognized. So we did that last Friday. And just recently, we recognized 3 more awesome aviators. Just to remind you, that was from a SAC project that we recognized awesome aviators around the district. Mrs. Gardner, who's an EA of Montgomery Elementary. She has had perfect attendance for over 24 years in the district. So she is amazing, and she still loves her job every single day working with students. Mrs. Sutherland, one of our bus drivers, there was a student that was refusing to get off the bus at Mapledale, and Mrs. Sutherland was the person that was able to get him off the bus in a calm, quiet manner. And then Mrs. Carroll, who is a teacher at Sims Elementary, she had probably the most unique one. It was written by a former student who was in 2nd grade. And just said she makes education fun. The energy that she has is amazing, and she absolutely loves what she does. And so we got to take a picture with not only Bailey Woodward, who wrote the recommendation, and Mrs. Carroll, but Mrs. Carroll and her entire class. If you've ever been to Miss Carroll's class at Sims, it is just amazing. Thematic, it's got, like, right now it's the fall theme, it's, you know, Halloween, it's, you know, it's just very fun environment for students and for everyone that goes into the room. So we will continue that monthly to recognizing some awesome aviators. So thank you for allowing me that time.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Weber, financial.
We have a very full executive session agenda. I did want to just give the board a very brief follow-up later update on the financial data in the report card, because that is also an area where the state does provide information in a couple different areas. One being our operating expenditure per pupil. So that's really just trying to capture the day-to-day costs educating a child, and not include things like construction costs and things like that. But it's really what does it cost for the district and other districts across Ohio to provide day-to-day operations. They do get some data on classroom and non-classroom spending, so you can see not only how much you spend, but where you're targeting those funds. And then we do have some comparison groups that are provided for the district, both by enrollment. I think that was based on looking at what are similar sized districts, so you can kind of have an apples to apples comparison on things like overhead costs, things like that, how they would impact. But then also that similar district list that Mrs. Wagner shared earlier today, districts that are probably most like us. So I'm just going to quickly go through these few slides, and then what I'd like for you to do is I can send you this presentation to, and we can maybe at a future meeting have some follow-up. But Mr. Long, if you can go on to the next slide.
Get a clicker right there.
Sorry, how'd that get there? Okay. I did want to show you that one of the key things is looking at our spending per pupil for operations. Gives you both our cost, which is about a little over $13,000 per student, compared to the state cost of $11,200 per student. What I think is important to look at when you drill down into this data, though, is how it is allocated to classroom instruction and non-classroom spending. So classroom spending is where you're seeing the variance in those two numbers. And actually, when you compare our non-classroom spending, which would be dollars spent on things like administration, building and maintenance, child nutrition. We are actually spending less than state average. The dollars that we are allocating and how we spend our fund is really, really focused on being in the classroom and improving things in the classroom, which I think is a really good indicator for us, looking at how our dollars are spent. So that's something we could drill down more on a future meeting, but I'd like for you guys just to keep that in mind. Those dollars that we spend are going to the right place. That was by a lot of work by Mr. Lewis when he was in that business option, and continuing on with Mr. Lovell and his team. Okay, you can see over time, the state is going back to the 2018-19 school year and what those costs per pupil are. You see that we have gone up to some extent over that time frame, but so have others in the state. I think one of the things that stands out to me when I think about even tying back to the conversation we had earlier today is that you see the more significant bump for us as a school district happening in the 2021 school year. That was when we made those major investments into providing programming for COVID. So that we made the investment. You're seeing that the average in the state is really catching up with us, or caught up with us last year. But I think that one of the things that sticks out to me is that I think we made the investment at the right time. I think others are catching up to us. We're leveling off more. Others in the state are trying to catch up with utilizing their dollars. So I think this is bearing fruit in what you saw with the information today on our results for our student data. Okay. Again, this is a comparison that just shows other schools in our comparison group, and this is by enrollment basis. They are just giving an indication of how do you compare to other school districts in that similar enrollment group and what you're spending on instruction. And so of the 44 school districts that are in our comparison group based on enrollment, we're number 6. So we're doing a really good job, I think, in comparison to other school districts of similar size and making sure that those dollars are going into the classroom. And finally, this is something I think we'll want to even look at in more detail moving forward, because it gives us not only how we compare both in what we're spending per student, but also on our performance. So that red dot on both of these charts shows Sycamore. See, we have in our comparison group by enrollment, I think we have the highest performance index score. We have also a fairly high cost, operating cost per pupil in that group. When you look at the similar districts, so that was the list that Mrs. Wegener shared. Again, we have one of the higher performance index scores, and looking at other comparative districts, we have, probably one of the higher costs per pupil, but certainly not the highest. So those are both groups that we can look at. How are we comparing both on performance and cost, and what might we be able to find by doing some work with other districts? To find all of this information, it's on the ODE website in the same area that you would find the rest of the report card data. There's a financial data tab that not only for us, but for other school districts in our comparison group that you can look at. So, and we'll be looking at it as well. So hopefully that just gives you an overview of some of the data that's available on the ODE website and information that we can continue to look at on both of these areas, not only just cost, but also how that impacts performance potentially.
Thank you very much. Moving on, I need a motion for the approval of the personnel consent agenda, which includes the addendum to 1E2 and 3O. Second. Whoever please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bitter. Aye.
Moving on to other Board of Education business. Need a motion for the approval of the bylaws for Sycamore Community Schools Business Advisory Council.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, comments from the board? Mrs. Weber, please call the roll.
Mrs. White.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
And Mr. Comer.
Motion passes. I need a motion to go under executive session for ORC 121.22G1 employment, compensation, discipline of a public employee, official, or regulated individual. ORC 121.22G2 sale or purchase of property. ORC 121.22G3 for legal attorney for the board concerning disputes involving the board that are subject to pending or imminent court action. ORC 121.22G4 negotiations. ORC 121.22G5, consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations.
Second.
So please call the roll.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Comer.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Mrs. Bitter.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will not be taking any votes.